The discovery. In the vast expanse of the Andromeda Galactic Archives, Dr. Ilara Voss ran her fingers across the ancient data crystals. The blue-white glow of the storage units cast eerie shadows across her face as she searched for answers. As one of the few xenoanthropologists granted access to this section, she knew she was treading on dangerous ground. "You're not authorized for these records, Dr. Voss," a voice chittered from behind her. Ilara didn't turn. She recognized the multitonal voice of Zik Toril, her Salaxian research partner. The insectoid's mandibles clicked with concern. "Yet here I am, Zik, with an access code that somehow works." She pulled a crystal from its housing, its surface glowing brighter at her touch. Section 117X, Earth Containment Protocols. Care to tell me why this exists? Zik Toril's compound eyes reflected the crystal's light. "I warned you about digging into Council blacklists. A planet of 8 billion sentients, quarantined without contact or representation for over 3 centuries. That's not a blacklist, Zik. That's imprisonment." The Salaxians' antennae drooped. The humans don't even know they're quarantined. They believe they're alone in the universe. Ilara inserted the crystal into her reader, and holographic text filled the air between them. "That's what makes it worse. They're still reaching for the stars, sending signals, hoping for an answer." She scrolled through the data. "And we're deliberately ignoring them. The Council has its reasons, which are," Ilara challenged. "That's what you're not cleared to know." Zik's voice lowered to a whisper. "And neither am I, officially." Ilara stopped scrolling. "But unofficially." Zik Toril looked around nervously, his exoskeleton clicking softly as he moved closer. "Have you ever heard of the Proxima incident?" "No. Of course not. It's been wiped from public records." The alien's voice became even quieter. "It was the only time the Council authorized direct observation of Earth after the quarantine." Ilara's eyes widened. "When?" "Earth year 2072. A small team was sent to assess whether containment protocols should continue." Zik hesitated. "None of them returned the same." "What does that mean? Were they harmed?" "Worse. They were changed." Zik's mandibles trembled. "They came back questioning everything about Council governance. 2 of them even violated their oaths and attempted to make contact with humans directly. They had to be contained." Ilara felt a chill. "Because they met humans. Because they saw what humans do." Zik gestured to another section of the archive. "The Council keeps the original observation records here. If you really want answers, that's where you'll find them." 30 minutes later, Ilara sat in a secure viewing chamber, Zik nervously standing guard outside. The room hummed as ancient footage played on all walls around her, immersing her in scenes from humanity's history. She watched in fascination as humans faced natural disasters, earthquakes leveling cities, floods washing away communities, volcanoes burying civilizations. But what struck her wasn't the destruction. It was what came after. Where most species in the galaxy would mourn, migrate, and avoid such places for generations, humans rebuilt. Right there, on the same ground, often bigger than before. More footage played. Wars, plagues, economic collapses. Each time, humans suffered, grieved, and then recovered with startling speed. "Computer, analyze emotional patterns in these recovery phases," she commanded. The AI replied in a neutral tone. "Analysis shows predominant emotions include determination, hope, solidarity, and notably, anticipation." "Anticipation. Explain." "Human behavioral patterns indicate psychological reward mechanisms activated during rebuilding phases. In simple terms, they appear to enjoy the challenge of recovery." Ilara leaned back, stunned. "They enjoy it." Affirmative. Human neurochemistry shows elevated levels of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins during post-disaster reconstruction efforts. This pattern is consistent with what humans call satisfaction or fulfillment. She watched more footage. Humans laughing while clearing rubble, singing while raising new structures, children playing in partially rebuilt neighborhoods. "Show me the war footage," she said quietly. The images shifted to battlefields. Destruction on scales that made Ilara wince. But again, it was the aftermath that the footage focused on. Veterans returning home, damaged but determined. Memorial services that somehow transformed into celebrations of life. Museums built to commemorate conflicts that should only bring shame and regret. "They don't just move on," she murmured. "They incorporate their tragedies into their identity." The final footage showed a human ceremony. Old soldiers from opposing sides of a conflict meeting decades later, embracing with tears and laughter. They were celebrating the anniversary of a battle where thousands had died. Ilara shut off the viewer, her hands shaking. Now she understood. She found Zik waiting anxiously outside. "Did you see it?" he asked. "Yes." She couldn't keep the awe from her voice. "They're trauma processors. The entire species." Zik's antennae twitched. "The Council has a different term for them. They call humans chaos adapters. Most species evolve to avoid catastrophe. Humans evolved to thrive on it. That doesn't explain the quarantine, doesn't it?" Zik's compound eyes fixed on her. "Imagine a species that not only survives disasters, but actually grows stronger from them. A species that takes its worst experiences and turns them into art, innovation, and cultural identity. Now imagine that species spreading throughout the galaxy." The implications hit Ilara like a shockwave. The Council fears them because they can't be controlled through crisis. Precisely. For every other known species, the threat of war, economic sanction, or natural disaster is a deterrent. For humans, it might actually make them stronger. Zik looked around nervously. "But there's more. Something about the last war that even I'm not permitted to know." The last war. Shortly before Earth was discovered and quarantined, humans had a global conflict that should have destroyed their civilization. Instead, Zik trailed off. Instead what? Instead, they emerged more unified, more technologically advanced, and with a renewed determination to reach the stars. The alien's voice dropped to a whisper. "The Council's deepest fear is that humans don't just survive catastrophe. They need it. And if they ever ran out of natural disasters, they might create their own." Ilara finished, horrified. "The quarantine isn't to protect the galaxy from human aggression," Zik confirmed. "It's to protect it from human inspiration. One planet of chaos adapters is a curiosity. A galaxy full of them would be revolution," Ilara said softly. Zik nodded solemnly. "And the Council fears revolution above all else." Ilara made her decision then. She would need to go deeper to find the truth about this last war that so terrified the Council. And as she looked at Zik, she realized she wouldn't be going alone. "The archives about the last war," she said. "Where are they kept?" Zik's mandibles clicked anxiously. "In the Forbidden Sector. No one accesses those files without direct Council authorization." Ilara smiled, holding up her mysterious access card. "Then it's fortunate I have exactly that, isn't it?" As they moved through the shadowed archives toward the most restricted section, Ilara couldn't stop thinking about the humans in that footage, laughing, building, creating in the face of destruction. A species that turned trauma into strength. And for the first time, she wondered about her own heritage. She'd been raised in the Proxima colonies, orphaned during a research expedition. No one had ever told her where her parents came from. But as she headed toward the truth about Earth's last war, a strange anticipation built within her. Almost like she was looking forward to the challenge ahead. Almost like she was enjoying it. The assessment. The forbidden sector of the archives hummed with an ethereal blue light. Unlike the organized, sterile main archives, this place felt almost alive. A nervous system of data crystals pulsing with secrets. "I've never seen technology like this," Ilara whispered, running her fingers over the strange interface. Instead of the standard holographic controls, these archives responded to touch. Primitive, yet somehow more intimate. That's because it's human technology, Zictoril replied, mandibles clicking with anxiety. After the quarantine was established, the Council decided that all research on human development should be conducted using their own methodologies. They feared that translating human concepts into galactic standard formats might lose something essential. Or they feared contamination, Ilara murmured. Look at this. Actual physical books. Printed words on processed plant matter. Inefficient, Zic commented. But durable. No power source needed. No network vulnerability. She picked up a leather-bound volume. 1,000 years from now, this would still be readable. The same could be said for Xerillian memory crystals, which require a Xerillian to access, Ilara countered. This book could be read by any species with eyes. It's radically democratic technology. She noticed Zic staring at her. What? You sound like them. The observers who were contaminated. Ilara returned the book to its shelf, unsettled by his observation. Let's find what we came for. They moved deeper into the archives until they reached a sealed door bearing the Council High Command insignia. Ilara pressed her access card against the scanner, holding her breath. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft hiss, the door slid open. That shouldn't have worked, Zic whispered, antennae twitching rapidly. That's a Tier 1 security clearance. Ilara stared at the card in her hand. Who gave this to me? I found it in my quarters with a note saying only truth seeks those ready to bear it. Someone very powerful, Zic replied, or very desperate. The room beyond was small and circular, with a single pedestal in the center. On it rested an old-fashioned device, a flat black rectangle with a glass surface. A tablet computer, Ilara identified it. Early 21st century Earth technology. How do you know that? Zic asked sharply. Ilara paused, confused. I don't know. I just do. She picked up the tablet, and to her surprise, it activated at her touch. The screen glowed to life, displaying a simple interface with one icon, a folder labeled The Assessment. It recognized you, Zic said, backing away slightly. That's genetically keyed technology. With trembling fingers, Ilara tapped the icon. The screen filled with text. Final assessment. Earth Containment Protocol. Galactic Cycle 72-9004. High Council Eyes Only. Summary. After extensive study of human historical patterns, cultural development, and biological imperatives, this committee has determined that the species Homo sapiens represents a Category 1 existential threat to galactic stability. Unlike previous assessments focusing on human aggression, this determination is based on a more fundamental characteristic. Humans have evolved to convert trauma into growth, both individually and collectively. This adaptation, unique among all known sentient species, renders them immune to the standard methods of societal control employed throughout the Galactic Confederacy. Ilara read aloud, her voice growing strained. Whereas most species develop trauma avoidance as a primary evolutionary strategy, humans have developed trauma processing. The hypothesis that this adaptation would diminish as their civilization advanced has been conclusively disproven. In fact, as human society has grown more complex, they have institutionalized and ritualized this adaptation. She scrolled through pages of analysis, psychological profiles, historical case studies, sociological models, all pointing to the same conclusion. Humans didn't just overcome disaster. They transformed through it. Look at this, she pointed to a section titled The Last War. It says here that in Earth Year 2042, humans engaged in what should have been a civilization-ending conflict, biological weapons, targeted infrastructure collapse, even limited nuclear exchange. That should have set them back centuries, Zic observed. But it didn't. Within a decade, they had not only recovered, but had made unprecedented technological leaps. Ilara's voice grew excited. Fusion power, advanced genetic medicine, quantum computing, and most significantly, the event, Zik finished, reading over her shoulder. What was the event? Ilara scrolled further, but the details were heavily redacted. Only one sentence remained clear. The event demonstrated conclusively that humans possess the ability to alter fundamental cosmic constants through directed collective will. She looked up at Zik, stunned. Is that even possible? Not according to any science I know, the Xalaxian replied. That would be like changing the gravitational constant or the speed of light, which is why they were quarantined, Ilara whispered. Not because they were dangerous, but because they were impossible. She continued reading. Most disturbingly, evidence suggests humans actively seek out or create challenges when their environment becomes too stable. Their art, entertainment, and social structures all show a pattern of intentionally introducing elements of chaos, struggle, and conflict. They appear to require these experiences for optimal psychological health. In conclusions, this committee determines that introducing humans to the galactic community would fundamentally destabilize the order established over 40,000 cycles. While humans themselves might not intend disruption, their mere presence, their ideas, their methods, their inexplicable abilities would inspire revolution among species currently content with their place in the Confederacy. Recommendation: permanent quarantine of Earth and all human settlements. Any human discovered beyond the quarantine zone is to be immediately contained and returned. All records of human existence are to be restricted to Tier 1 clearance. The official position of the Confederacy shall be that Earth is uninhabited and under study as a potential terraforming candidate. Gods of the void, Ilara breathed. They erased an entire species from history. There's more, Zik said, pointing to a final paragraph. Secondary recommendation. The Proxima Observation Station shall maintain continuous monitoring of Earth development. Unlike previous containment protocols, this committee does not recommend preventing human advancement. Attempts to impede human progress have historically accelerated their development in unpredicted directions. Instead, we recommend allowing normal development while introducing subtle cultural suggestions that space travel is impossible, impractical, or undesirable. They're actively manipulating Earth's development, Ilara said, anger rising in her voice, feeding them discouragement, making them think the stars are out of reach. She was about to continue when a small notation at the bottom of the document caught her eye. Proxima Station personnel. See Appendix C regarding management of human hybrid children resulting from Incident 2192. Human hybrid children. She quickly navigated to Appendix C. The file opened to show a list of names and genetic profiles. At the top of the list, Voss, Ilara. 78% human genetic markers, maternal lineage. Status: monitored. The tablet slipped from her fingers, clattering on the floor. Zik picked it up, his compound eyes widening as he read the screen. You're human, he chittered, backing away. Or mostly human. That's not possible, Ilara whispered. I'm Proximan. My parents were researchers who died in the stellar flare of 2192. She stopped suddenly. Incident 2192. Memories flashed through her mind. Her unusual strength compared to her peers, her uncanny intuition, her drive to explore forbidden knowledge, her inexplicable knowledge of Earth technologies. The way she'd always felt different, separate from the other children in the Proxima colonies. You knew, she accused Zik. You've been watching me. The Xalaxian's antennae drooped. Not watching. Protecting. There are those on the Council who would have you eliminated as a security risk. Others who would study you like a laboratory specimen. Why? Because I'm part human. Because you're proof, Zik said quietly. Proof that humans can integrate with other species. Proof that the quarantine might be unnecessary. And most dangerously, proof that humans can pass their unique traits to their offspring. Ilara felt a strange calm settling over her, replacing the initial shock. It was as if some part of her had always known this truth, had been waiting for this moment. The access card, she said. Who gave it to me? Before Zik could answer, the lights in the archive flashed red. An alarm sounded, soft but insistent. "Security breach detected," announced an automated voice. "All personnel must evacuate immediately. Archives sealing in 3 minutes." "We've been discovered," Zik said urgently. "We need to go. Now." But Ilara didn't move. Instead, she picked up the tablet, fingers flying across its surface as she accessed more files. "Not yet. There's something else here. Something about the event. I need to know what humans did that frightened the Council so badly." "Ilara, please," Zik pleaded. "If they find you here, with your genetics, knowing what you now know." 2 minutes to archive sealing, the automated voice warned. "There," Ilara exclaimed, opening the heavily encrypted file. Project Quantum Mirror. The screen filled with images that made no sense to her. Complex mathematical equations, strange diagrams of overlapping realities, and footage of what appeared to be humans standing in a circle, hands joined, while reality itself seemed to warp around them. "What am I looking at?" she whispered. "The impossible," Zik answered, his voice filled with awe despite his fear. They created a connection between parallel universes, not with technology, but with their minds. Somehow they used their collective consciousness to bend reality itself. 1 minute to archive sealing. "We have to go," Zik insisted, pulling at her arm. This time, Ilara nodded. She quickly pressed her palm against the tablet, downloading its contents into the neural interface in her wrist. Another technology, she suddenly realized, was not standard Proximan issue, but specifically designed for her hybrid physiology. As they raced through the darkening archives, alarm lights casting crimson shadows across ancient shelves, Ilara's mind whirled with revelations. She wasn't who she thought she was. Her entire life had been carefully managed, her career directed toward xenoanthropology, so she could help the Council understand her mother's people without ever knowing they were her people. 30 seconds to archive sealing. They reached the main entrance just as the massive doors began to close. Sliding through the narrowing gap, they emerged into the grand atrium of the Galactic Archives and found themselves surrounded by Council security forces, plasma weapons aimed at their hearts. At the center of the security team stood a tall, gray-skinned figure with eyes like liquid silver. Director Varnax of Council Intelligence, the most feared enforcer in the Confederacy. "Dr. Voss," he said, his voice like ice crystals forming in vacuum. "You've accessed restricted information. Information your particular heritage makes extremely dangerous." Ilara straightened her back, feeling the strange new confidence flowing through her. Perhaps this was what the assessment had described: the human ability to face crisis not with fear, but with focused determination. "You're right, Director," she replied calmly. "I am dangerous, but not because I know your secrets." She held up her wrist, where the neural interface glowed with the downloaded files. "I'm dangerous because I'm about to share them." The Reckoning. The interrogation chamber aboard the Council security vessel hummed with suppressed energy. Ilara sat calmly at the center of the room, her wrists bound by neural suppressors, devices specifically calibrated to her unique physiology. Across from her, Director Varnax studied her with cold, silver eyes. "You understand the severity of your actions, Dr. Voss," he said. "It wasn't a question." "Perfectly," she replied. "I accessed information I wasn't supposed to know existed, discovered my true heritage was deliberately hidden from me, and learned that the Galactic Council has imprisoned an entire species based on fear rather than justice." Fear. Varnax's gray skin rippled with what might have been amusement. "You mistake prudence for fear, Doctor. The quarantine of Earth is the most merciful option available." "Merciful?" Ilara leaned forward, despite the warning buzz from her restraints. "You've denied them their rightful place among sentient species. You've manipulated their development, inserted cultural programming to discourage space exploration. How is that mercy? The alternative was extinction." The director's voice remained emotionless. There were council members who advocated for the complete sterilization of Earth after the event. They saw what humans could do, what they might become, and recognized an existential threat. Because they can adapt to trauma. Because they grow stronger through adversity. Ilara shook her head. Those aren't threats. They're evolutionary advantages. Advantages that would destabilize 10,000 years of galactic peace. Varnax placed a data crystal on the table between them. It projected a holographic display of galactic territories. Thousands of worlds, billions of beings, all operating under the Council's careful management. This order was not easily achieved, Dr. Voss. Species that once warred across star systems now coexist in harmony. Trait flows. Knowledge advances, carefully, responsibly. Disease and famine have been eliminated in Confederate space. At what cost? Ilara challenged. Where's the art that comes from struggle? Where's the innovation born of necessity? You've created stagnation and called it peace. The director's silver eyes narrowed. And that response confirms exactly why your human heritage makes you dangerous. You see our greatest achievement, stable, sustainable civilization, and call it stagnation. He rose, circling the table with predatory grace. What do you imagine would happen if humans were suddenly introduced to the Confederacy? A species that thrives on challenge, that grows bored with stability, that creates conflict where none exists simply to feel the rush of overcoming it. We would change, Ilara admitted, but change isn't apocalypse. For many species it is. Varnax's voice carried absolute conviction. The Thalassians nearly went extinct during their last period of rapid social change. The Voroks actually did go extinct. Their neural pathways couldn't process cultural paradigm shifts quickly enough, and their entire species suffered massive psychotic breaks. Not every being in this galaxy has humanity's remarkable neuroplasticity. For the first time, Ilara felt doubt creep in. She hadn't considered that other species might be genuinely vulnerable to rapid change. Then introduce humanity gradually, she suggested. Controlled cultural exchange, limited to species with sufficient adaptability. Like the exchange program that produced you. Varnax countered. A carefully managed experiment that resulted in an individual who, despite the best conditioning and education, still exhibits fundamentally human characteristics. Curiosity that overrides caution, rebellion against authority, and a concerning ability to inspire similar behavior in non-humans. He glanced meaningfully toward the adjacent cell where Zictoral was being held. Zic made his own choices, Ilara insisted, after prolonged exposure to you, just as the original observation team changed after extended contact with Earth. The director leaned closer. Humanity is mimetically infectious, Dr. Voss. Your ideas spread like viruses, restructuring the very thought patterns of those exposed to them. Before Ilara could respond, the interrogation room door slid open. A tall, willowy figure entered, one of the Thelmar, the ancient founding species of the Confederacy. Her skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, and the crown of neural filaments atop her head pulsed with complex thoughts. Director Varnax immediately straightened, offering the formal bow of respect. High Counselor Thelmera, this is unexpected, yet necessary, Director. The High Counselor's voice resonated with harmonics that conveyed meaning beyond mere words. I will speak with Dr. Voss privately. With respect, Counselor, this prisoner has accessed Tier 1 restricted information. The security protocols were established by my ancestors, Director. I am well aware of them. The neural filaments above Thelmera's head pulsed with subtle irritation. You are dismissed. After the director reluctantly departed, the High Counselor settled gracefully into the chair opposite Ilara. With a gesture, she deactivated the restraints. You have caused quite a disturbance, Dr. Voss, she said, but there was no anger in her harmonics, only curiosity, and perhaps a hint of amusement. Ilara rubbed her wrists, studying the ancient being before her. The Thelmar were said to have achieved sentience when mammals on Earth were still small furry creatures hiding from dinosaurs. It wasn't my intention, Ilara replied carefully. No. Thelmera's head tilted. Then why access the Earth archives? Why download restricted files on human capability? I wanted the truth. About Earth. About myself. And now that you have it. Ilara hesitated, then decided on complete honesty. I want justice for Earth. An end to the quarantine. The High Counselor's bioluminescence shifted to a contemplative pattern. What if I told you the quarantine serves a purpose beyond what you've discovered? That it protects humans as much as it protects us from them? I'd ask you to explain. Thelmera's neural crown pulsed. The interrogation room dimmed, and the walls became projection surfaces. Suddenly, Ilara was surrounded by stars, a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. The Confederacy, the counselor said, as thousands of worlds illuminated in blue. Then, scattered throughout the galaxy, hundreds of systems glowed red. And these are what we call the Crucible worlds. I've never heard of them. Few have. They are quarantined, like Earth, but for different reasons. Thelmera gestured, and one red system expanded, revealing a dead world, its surface scorched and barren. The Etholians. They developed faster than light travel 4,000 years ago. Within a century, they had destroyed themselves in a war over resource rights. Another system expanded, this one showing a planet whose atmosphere swirled with unnatural patterns. The Vox Collective. They developed a form of distributed consciousness technology. It evolved beyond their control and now consumes any organic matter it encounters. System after system appeared, each showing a different face of apocalypse, self-destruction, technological disaster, biological catastrophe. Every sentient species reaches crucial developmental thresholds, Thelmera explained, moments where their technological capability outpaces their ethical evolution. Most destroy themselves at these junctures. And the Confederacy does nothing to help them. Ilara asked, horrified. We observe, we learn. And in rare cases, very rare cases, when a species navigates their crucible moments successfully, we extend an invitation to join the Confederacy. The display changed again, showing a timeline of Earth's development. Humans have survived 3 crucible moments already: nuclear weapons proliferation, climate tipping points, and bioengineering breakthroughs. No other species in our records has survived more than 2. Ilara stared at the timeline, noticing something strange. These developments, they're happening faster for humans than for other species. Much faster, Thelmera confirmed, and that presents a problem. The fastest developing species before humans took nearly 1,000 years to progress from primitive nuclear technology to the threshold of the Great Filter. The Great Filter, the ultimate crucible, the technological singularity point where a species gains the ability to fundamentally alter reality itself. The counselor's voice grew solemn. What you discovered, the event, was humanity's first unconscious step toward that threshold. They don't even understand what they did, yet they touched powers that most species in the Confederacy still consider theoretical. The display showed the strange images Ilara had seen in the archives. Humans standing in a circle, reality warping around them. By our most conservative estimates, Thelmera continued, humans will reach full Great Filter capability within 100 years. No quarantine can contain them then. They will either transcend into something beyond our comprehension or destroy themselves so completely that their very existence will be erased from the cosmic record. Ilara struggled to process the implications, and the Council's response is to just watch, to let them either evolve or die without any guidance. That has been our policy for 40,000 years, the Counselor acknowledged. But recently, a minority faction has advocated for a different approach. Her neural filaments pulsed with what might have been conspiracy, a faction I quietly support. Understanding dawned on Ilara. The access card. You're the one who left it for me. Thelmera's bioluminescence shifted to affirmation patterns. The Confederacy has reached its own crucible moment, Dr. Voss. 10,000 years of stability has led to stagnation. We have not produced a truly revolutionary idea in millennia. Meanwhile, quarantined Earth generates more scientific, philosophical, and artistic breakthroughs in a decade than the entire Confederacy does in a century. You want to end the quarantine, Ilara said, amazed. Not exactly. We want to selectively breach it. The counselor leaned forward. The majority of the council still believes humanity is too dangerous to integrate fully into galactic society. Perhaps they're right. But what if we could introduce human thinking, human creativity, human resilience, without the destabilizing effects of full contact? How? Through individuals like you, Dr. Voss. Thelmura gestured, and the room's display changed again, showing images of what appeared to be other human hybrid children, dozens of them, of various ages, with various non-human characteristics. The Proxima program was not an accident or a security breach. It was an authorized experiment, a small-scale test to see if human cognitive patterns could be integrated with other species' biological stability. Ilara felt her worldview shifting once again. I'm not just a hybrid. I'm a prototype. You are the most successful integration we've achieved, the counselor confirmed. Human creativity and resilience, tempered by Proxima and emotional stability. You retain humanity's remarkable ability to process trauma into growth, but without their concerning tendency to create chaos when environments become too stable. And now what? You want to use me as proof that humans can be domesticated. Thelmira's neural crown pulsed with negation. No, I want you to be the bridge, the first of a new approach to incorporation rather than quarantine. The display shifted again, showing a small vessel. This ship is prepared to take you to Earth. Your genetic signature will allow you to pass through the quarantine barriers. Once there, you would be our first true ambassador, not to their governments, but to their people. You would identify potential candidates for limited cultural exchange, scientific collaboration, even artistic partnerships. You want me to be a recruiter, Ilara said flatly. I want you to be a pathfinder, Thelmira corrected. For 10,000 years, the Confederacy has operated on fear of difference. I believe it's time to explore the possibilities of controlled integration. And if I refuse, then Director Varnax's approach prevails. Your memories will be adjusted, and you'll be returned to your position, unaware of your heritage or this conversation. Earth will remain quarantined until they either destroy themselves or evolve beyond our ability to contain them. The Confederacy will continue its slow decline into irrelevance. Ilara stood, pacing the small room as her mind raced. Everything she'd learned, everything she'd discovered about herself, now culminated in this impossible choice. Why me?